Hello, everybody. My name is Christina, and together we will talk here today about the Lean startup. Let me share first my screen. Yes, here we are. And let's get started. So the Lean startup. I have based what I will share with you all here today in a book that I recently read, which is called The Lean Startup. This book was published in 2011, and its author is Eric Rice. If we had to start somewhere, then the perfect place to start would be innovation. As we all know, innovation is everywhere around us, and startups, as well as well-established companies, such as General Electric, are interested in innovation, and more specifically in the Lean startup approach, because they know that innovation is important, and if you don't innovate, then you stagnate, and this means that it's not long until you actually not survive. So if we had to think of where the Lean Startups approach got inspired, then we could say that that place was the Toyota production system. It's also widely known as the Lean manufacturing process. So there we have that. Here we have a brief overview of what the Lean startup method comprises of. We all know that entrepreneurs are everywhere. In well-established companies, they are often called as entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship is management. Even if many startups don't believe this is actually true. You need to be quite disciplined. You may not have so many processes or systems, or you don't work with a lot of bureaucracy and so on, but still you need to have something. And then you can see in front of you three more bullet points, which are all equally important. Validated learning, the feedback loop, which is called the build, measure, learn, and the innovation accounting, which are all important, and we will see together what they stand for in a bit. First, I would like to say that we all know that startups operate under extreme uncertainty and a lot of risk. And if we had to say what is their goal, then that would be that they try to create the right thing, which is something that their customers want and are willing to pay for, and they do have to do it as quickly as possible. And in order to succeed in this endeavor, they have to iterate fast. They need to have a customer insight, a huge vision, and great ambition. And they also need to be able to make a clear distinction between activities that they can create value or activities that they can lead to waste when it comes to creating quality products. But at the same time, they need to constantly think of their engine of growth, find what is their engine of growth, and then take strategic decisions upon that, and be able to make constant usage of the build, measure, learn feedback loop, and be courageous enough to pivot or persevere when necessary. We, as startups, should be always embracing the scientific way, which says that if you cannot fail, then you cannot learn. And in order to do so, we have to construct clear hypotheses, which are to be tested. These hypotheses are usually hypotheses that are created because of predictions, and these predictions have to be tested empirically. But before that, what we need to make sure is that we know what we want to learn. So we have to identify as startups some small iterations which have the power to bring the most value and cause the least waste. And we don't need to argue what needs to happen next, but what we should do instead is to go there and run a test. And this will provide us with the right answer. So as startups, we need to think big, but start small. And we should always think in terms of our value and growth hypotheses, which are both critical. Here you can find in front of you the extended loop of the build, measure, learn feedback loop. It all starts with an idea, and then the startup starts to build a product, and then the startup gets the end product, and then it creates the right metrics to back up or not its hypothesis, and then some data are started to be generated, and then the startup starts to learn if they were right on track or if they should actually pivot. And in case that the startup has to pivot, then it should start with another hypothesis and start all the way from the beginning again. In cases that we want to test something, it's very wise to start early on with a minimum viable product. In the minimum viable product, there shouldn't be spent a lot of effort and development time, but the minimum viable product should be good enough in order to actually test our assumptions, which requires some extra work. The team should be working in a disciplined, systematic way and be able to constantly check if it makes progress or not, and be constantly aware if it learns what it wanted to learn. This can be summarized as innovation accounting. And why innovation accounting is so important is because what we see in many companies is that instead of focusing on innovation accounting, what they focus on is success theater, in which they may, which means that they may look good on paper, but they not end up having real progress. So we should pivot or persevere, and the better we pivot, if there is such a need, the better. Because this way we don't learn, we don't spend a lot of money and a lot of time, and what's on top of that is that we don't find ourselves among the land of the living dead, which is a phase in which a product or a startup doesn't have enough reasons to kill the product or the startup itself, but not is not also able to see any real progress. A very interesting term that can be traced back to the Toyota production system is the Genchi Gebutsu, which in English means go and see for yourself. We all know that customer behavior is measurable and changeable, so what we need to do is actually get out of the building. What we see in many entrepreneurs is that they are often deluded, either because they think that they are in the right path, because customers do not seem to know what they want, or in a lot of cases, we see entrepreneurs to be led to analysis paralysis, which is a phase in which entrepreneurs keep refining their plans because they're too afraid to go out there and see what happens. So with that being said, we need to state once again that we should be courageous enough to test our minimum viable products so that we can see that we are right on our assumptions, and be constantly working in a disciplined way, and be careful to create minimum viable products that are good enough. A tip here is to always try to test our riskiest assumption first. The success of a startup would be the number of pivots that it can still make, and we all know cases in which failure to pivot was proven to be fatal. There are many different kinds of pivots. I haven't listed many of them here for you. If you're interested, please try to find out later more about them, because I want to go into all of them in detail. All pivots are very interesting, and they are in their base strategic hypotheses that have been formed, and it should be verified if they are aligned with the engine of growth of the startup or not, and if they are aligned with the strategy or not, and if not, then the startup has to do something about it. A nice way to run tests quickly enough and act upon the results is the split test. In this test, what the startup can do is that they can offer their a different version of their product to different sets of customers, and then observe them and their reactions, and do what they consider to be necessary later on, depending on those observations. The Kanban is another interesting term that can be traced back to the Toyota production system. In English, it's called capacity constraint, and it means that you have a system in place in order to reduce your work in progress. And if you utilize this, then you can change your product prioritization process. In cases that the Kanban system is used, you have a pull system and not a push system, which means that you don't do anything as a business up to the point that a customer places an order, and then you work backwards in order to be able to deliver to the customer what they asked for, but you haven't started, for example, your production before that. You start your production by the time that you have a customer order placed. There are many ways to grow your business. Word of mouth is one of them. Another one can be as a side effect of product usage. If a friend asks me to use an app because they want to deliver me, they want, for example, to send me some money, then I may have to download that app. So this results to business growth, of course, even if I wasn't an initial customer from the very beginning. Advertising can be another way, and then we have repeat purchase or use, which means that customers keep buying the products of a company, of course. And what is interesting here is to know that some ways can lead to growth, but they can be also costly. So what we should be aware of is that we don't want to run out of gas. Startups should care for the long-term benefit of a customer. They should act quickly and create quality products. They should run tests and never abandon their vision until, of course, this is very much necessary. If we had to summarize everything in just a couple of sentences, then that would be that it doesn't matter what you think when you develop a product, but what your customers think and how willing they are to pay for your product. Run tests and listen. So thank you, everybody, for your time and your attention here today. I hope you learned a thing or two, and wish you to have a nice day. Bye.